Hi Vicki, welcome to the Franchise Marketing Show. How are you?
I'm very well, Steph. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you on. For those that dare not, I don't know how, but don't know who you are, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Vicki Mitman and I am a franchise lawyer. I work with Nina Moran Watson at the firm NMW Franchise Services. And I've been in franchising one way or another for a long time. My parents became franchisors when I was 9 years old, and I'm very close to them, so I grew up with them in the business, and I went to franchisee training. I worked in the office during school holidays in my teenage years, and I really kind of grew up in franchising. So when I went to law school, which was my dream at that time, I really focused on the commercial side of things, and there was a franchise elective, which actually my parents and some other franchisors contributed to at law school. And it was just something that I wanted to pick up more and more of. And when I did my training, I went to a firm that had a specialism in franchising and have been in the world ever since, both as a director of a franchisor and then as a franchise lawyer.
That's so cool. So if anyone was to slice you in half,
it would say franchising. Definitely.
What is it about the franchise industry particularly that has kind of kept you in its grip, in its arms?
I think there are a few things. One is that it feels like a family. It is a really caring, sharing industry. And I feel like there are a lot of people, when I'm coming to these events, I know I'll see people I already know. I tend to always meet someone new who's also wonderful. And the industry doesn't seem to lose many good people. Like the people that I've known have been here for 10, 15, 20 years. And some a lot longer than that. And it's nice that you can kind of grow up in an industry. And even if you're changing direction, and there are a lot of people who've worked with a number of different franchise brands in their time, and they still have that lovely sort of attitude towards franchising, and they like to see it from different angles, and I think that gives them a nice experience and a broader range.
Yeah. So over those 20 years, however, what changes have you seen within the industry?
It's a good question. I've definitely seen a diversity in sectors come through, and I think there are ebbs and flows. Like some sectors seem to do really well for a few years, and then another sector will really explode and do well.
Yeah.
Certainly, when I was growing up, it was my parents were in the drainage and plumbing business, so it was a lot of man and van businesses, and maybe I saw more of that because I knew about it, and obviously the fast food sector. But then there have been a lot of moves away or into other areas. So domiciliary care became quite big, and then kids activity. I think I just like the fact that franchising has such a broad range and it really does cover everything.
It literally does. I think there's the BFA did their survey, and I think there's now over 1,000 brands in the UK alone, which is quite special.
And it really gives someone such a great choice, but also makes the whole industry quite resilient.
Yeah.
Because even if there are ebbs and flows, there will be some sectors in franchising that are always doing really well and are always necessary. And I think as well, COVID showed us how resilient the industry can be, because a lot of franchisors were able to change the way they delivered their services quite quickly. And the ones that did are even stronger for it now because they have a dual offering, like a face-to-face and maybe an online offering.
Yeah.
So there's quite a lot of exciting possibility in franchising.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously going through COVID, there was also the financial crash of 2009, and you mentioned the resilience of franchising, and that's something that's obviously quite key for people looking for a franchise. What else would you say from your perspective of the legal side of things is important for people who are looking for a franchise?
So for people who are looking for a franchise, I think it's knowing that there's a support system there. So the franchisor has already created a model that works and they have tried and tested it. And that they've got that ongoing support, because most people who go into business by themselves, it's an uphill battle, and it feels like a never-ending road. Whereas people coming into franchising have already got that experience from the franchisor who will train them and will share that knowledge, and then will be there as a resource. And there should be a whole suite of resources and operations manual that they can refer to, as well as their training. So I think having that as a good solid training and foundation for them to start their business is really important. And also most franchisors take pride in looking after their franchisees, because a franchisor is only as strong as its franchisees. So if its franchisees are doing well and thriving, so will the franchisor be, but it doesn't work well if they're losing franchisees and franchisees are failing. So because it's all a collaborative, and I think that's probably the word that comes out of it, collaborative and supportive, it's a really nice sector to be in, and there's generally a lot more success.
Yeah. So that leads me, so we obviously met at an EWIF event and we became really good friends over that. The element of women in franchising, have you seen that change over the years that you've been involved?
So I think there are definitely more women now than when I joined franchising. I remember my mum being one of the few women franchisors at that time, and certainly in what was considered a male-dominated sector, like the man and bam and technical side. But I think there's a lot more opportunity for women in franchising now, both as franchisors and franchisees, and I think that support and collaboration that we just talked about is really like a welcome change for women. Particularly, I found advising prospective franchisees often on their agreements, the franchise agreements they're entering into, or sale agreements if they're buying a going concern business. They want to know that they'll have that ongoing support, but they're actually really keen and driven to do something more than just be an employee somewhere. And often it's for women returning after maternity leave, who worked at big corporates but don't want the hours or the targets or the stress or the commutes that they used to have. They want to do something that's more tailorable around their personal life, and I think franchising gives a lot of people that opportunity, particularly women.
Yeah, I definitely hear a lot of that in terms of the conversations that we have with women, like at EWIF or EWIB, and just even within like the franchise clients that I work with, you get a lot of those kind of conversations. So people who wanted, particularly women who wanted to have more control over their time and be able to spend time with their family and go to the children's events or school, school trips,
and like have it really part of their lives, but helping to increase what they want to do rather than take away from what they want to do.
And also be that role model for their children of like women, like you mentioned that your parents, so your mum was that strong role model for you.
Absolutely.
I would imagine.
Absolutely, one of my superheroes. And her and my dad both, but I grew up with a strong working mum, and it never occurred to me that I wouldn't work. But I never felt like she was absent from me. She was very much present in my life, as was my dad. And I think that's because they created a business that allowed them to have that flexibility around me, but was still really exciting for them to grow.
Yeah, that's really nice. And that's like the first-hand experience. So like any woman that may be thinking about running her own business and worried about the impact that it would have on the children, from your experience having grown up, you're like, do it.
And it's fun, and share it with your kids. Like I would say that mum and dad weren't afraid to talk to me about business, and we probably quite old-fashioned, but we all sat together around the table at the end of the day, and they would ask me how school was, and I would ask them how business was, and they would talk to me about stuff, and even if I wasn't initially interested, they'd find a way to make it fun for me. And I think having that level of knowledge and interest in it from a young age helped, and it's nice as well to know that your kids are sort of involved and they know what you're doing. So whenever I was asked at school, like, what do your parents do? What does your family do? I could tell them, and most people were like, I think my dad works in a bank, I'm not sure. And like that's the end of it. They knew their parents were employed somewhere. But actually I could talk at length about the franchise conventions I'd been on with 150 people, and the awards dinner and the training and the meetings that we'd had, and the motivational speakers that were there, just the really fun side of business. And I think having that really from a young age massively helped. And certainly cements franchising in my mind.
You're probably like part of the foundation of franchising in the UK.
That's a nice way to think of it.
Vicki, if you were like going to give advice to women, let's talk about women in particular. If they were interested in starting a franchise or joining a franchise, but weren't sure like what steps were needed, from your experience, from your professional understanding, what do they need to do?
I'd say first get a good idea of what the industry's got to offer, because there is, like we said, it's varied. And even if there's a sector within that, for example, kids' activities, there's also a lot of opportunity and options within that. So have a good look around. Come to exhibitions like this, because it's a great way to see a few of the brands together. This is not the only way, but it's definitely a good way to get a feel for the wider industry, and then the options within a sector. And then have conversations, and I would say find a franchisor that you resonate with, and also the business that you think is a really fun idea, something that you're going to be happy waking up and doing day after day. And then think about whether you want to be the one delivering the services, or whether you want to be more of a manager, and whether you're taking on a team, and what the plan is for that. And having that growth plan, talking to the right advisors. And there are so many really great advisors in franchising, from bank advisors, legal advisors, accountancy, marketing. There's so many options here, and it's a supportive and collaborative industry where there are really people who are happy to share their experience and to give of themselves at every level. And I've rarely said to someone, like, if I've said, can we have a chat about something, I'm not sure I understand this, or I'd like to know more about it. Without a doubt, it's always been, yeah, sure, let's jump on a call, let's have a chat. And it's that helps me with the, I suppose, feeling like franchising is such a supportive space.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say come and get a good view of the industry, a good view of the sector you're most interested in, and then within that, like, the kind of business that really lights you up and the people that you want to work with. Because a lot of it is about personality in this business, and about
definitely.
trust and feeling supported, particularly if this is the first business someone's taken on and they've come out of an otherwise employed corporate role.
Yeah, definitely. It is, people buy from people, and it's that personal connection, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the know, like and trust.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I think you taught me, actually.
Oh. Vicky, it's so interesting to kind of hear your perspective of the industry, but also as a woman. And you're obviously, like, not only are you involved in franchising as a female, but in law as a female.
Yeah.
You're like the epitome of a woman who is, like, smashing it when it comes to male-dominated industries.
Well, I think actually in law, I understand there are now more women than men.
I love that.
I haven't got the figures, but that's what I was told recently, and I suppose it didn't really surprise me, because even in my training year, when I was training as a lawyer, you do a 2-year training contract, and there were 75% women in my training year.
Okay.
And the difference is about where they go to afterwards. So we all qualified at the same time. We all were taken on as lawyers, as junior solicitors at that time, either by that firm or by other firms. But the only one of us that's a partner in a law firm is out of the 4 of us there were, the only one that was male is the only one that's a partner now.
Okay.
And I don't know if that is a problem with the sector generally, or because women get to a certain level, but then they also take career breaks potentially to have children.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a director of a franchise law firm now, and I work at a similar level, but otherwise it has taken longer, I think, for the women to get up there, or they have left the sector.
Okay.
So there might be something in that, but I've got to say, even if I look around the other franchise lawyers that I know so well in this industry, there are as many women as men, if not more, and that's fantastic, which is it's fantastic when coming to advise women particularly as well.
Yeah.
But I'd say that the legal sector is changing too, certainly from when I entered it to where it is now.
Yeah.
And I think the franchise element of the legal sector is also really nice, because we are quite collaborative. Often lawyers on the other side of matters don't really have the greatest relationships outside of franchising, but in the industry, because we know each other, it's often a bit more grown up. We all know what we're doing, and it works well. We actually get deals done quicker. So things like franchise resales, if I know the other lawyers acting for, if I'm acting for the franchisor and I know the 2 lawyers acting for the buyer and seller, everything moves quite smoothly. We can all have that. We can rely on our relationships in the industry to make things move quite well.
That's really nice. What do you think is, like, what's caused that change for, like, the industry opening up to women a lot more?
I think it's the variety of choice, and maybe as well, like, the buy-in costs. I don't know. Certain sectors are much lower investment, and that might be easier for women to. Because I think women are more cautious when they spend.
Yeah, definitely.
Not always, but sometimes.
Depends what it is.
It depends on
Shoes.
But I think, when they're looking at a big investment in themselves personally, I believe men are more likely to invest higher in themselves personally and their business risk. So maybe having a wider option of franchises available, and therefore a wider range of buy-ins helps.
Yeah.
But also maybe the fact that the sector is a lot more welcoming and supportive for women, like, as you said, at EWIF that we met at, that was all about empowering and advising and showing women that it can be done, supporting them, and holding other women up as examples of what could be achieved. And that was, that was brilliant. It was so necessary, and I hope there'll be a time when it's not necessary anymore, because everyone just knows it.
Yeah.
But actually what the BFA do with women in franchise events, and what the likes of EWIF did a lot to empower and support women in their journey.
Yeah.
So as a result, maybe it's just a lot more open, and people know that it's possible. And when you look around exhibitions and shows and conferences, it's not just, full of men in suits in their mid-60s. There's such a variety of people here, and that's wonderful.
Yeah, definitely. It's nice to be part of such a collaborative community. Yeah, and I've loved, like, our journey of getting to know each other and spending time together.
Exactly, because we started off meeting each other professionally, and then we became friends, and it's actually quite nice that we both know a lot about what we do as well. So there are so many things there are so many opportunities where I can say, oh, actually, if you want help with that, talk to Steph, because she knows what she's doing. Talk to Coconuts. Yeah. And having that relationship with you, and with a lot of members of the franchise sector, is really important, because I think of this world as my family, but a broader family as well. I know that my actual family were in it, but they're not now. My parents are both retired and they don't do much in the franchise world now. But I love to think that I've got this new group of franchise family through friends that I've made and connections I've made in the industry.
Yeah.
And I don't plan to go anywhere anytime soon.
That's good to know. Although we'll still meet up, but that's good to know. Yeah. Vicki, you are absolutely fascinating, and I can sit and talk to you for ages. I mean, obviously we do anyway.
We do.
But I really appreciate you taking the time to come and sit and chat with us. Thank you.
For having me.